Hello and welcome to another episode of Random Fandom. I'm your host Mayhem, and this week I got around to seeing the Man of Steel movie just yesterday. I know it seems a little late for a big-time comic book nerd like myself to wait almost a week into a film's release to go see it, but that's the way I roll. I really hate going to see movies on opening weekend and even a couple days into the next week, just because I hate crowds. Is anybody out there like me and you just can't stand the full crowd of a theater on like a Saturday night when a movie has just come out? I love empty theaters. I love going on like a Wednesday early afternoon show when it's like me and maybe 2 or 3 other people in there, even if it's for a popular movie, because most people just have other things to do during the day. And the very one or two few times that I've actually been the only person in an entire theater, there's just nothing better than being the only person in an entire theater to me. So I don't usually go see movies on opening weekend, so I generally need to wait at least till the middle of the next week before I can go see them. But I did get around to seeing Man of Steel, my probably most anticipated movie of the summer, next to Pacific Rim. So I was really excited about seeing it, and I hope that I wasn't overhyping it, and I wasn't. I was very content with how the movie actually ended up being. And that's kind of a small miracle, because when it comes to Warner Brothers and their DC properties turning them into movies, it's really about a 50-50 prospect in terms of being a good film or not. And that's especially holds true with Superman movies. We do not have the best track record of Superman movies or TV shows or any kind of Superman media. It's really hit or miss, so this could have gone either way, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised that it turned out as well as it did. So I really ended up liking it. So in this episode, I'm going to give my Man of Steel review of the movie, and there's going to be spoilers included in here, so if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want any kind of plot points revealed, certainly wait until you see the movie before you listen to my review. And then I'm also going to do kind of a little bit of a Superman retrospective about all the other Superman films and media and shows that have come out within the last couple of decades. And then also the Christopher Reeve movies that are actually more than a couple decades old. But start off with my Man of Steel review. It wasn't a perfect film. It wasn't like, The Dark Knight or Avengers in terms of just being picture-perfect, spot-on comic book movie. But there were definitely a lot more things I liked about it than dislikes. So things that I really, really liked about the movie, for starters, it wasn't done in a cheesy fashion, which is kind of a delicate line to have to tread when it comes to Superman movies. They can easily become very cheesy because the character himself is fairly cheesy in his Boy Scout approach to life and being a superhero. But this was done very straight-laced, and it wasn't done in a campy comic book style. It was approached more seriously, and I liked the way they did it. So it wasn't cheesy, it was very straight-laced and done correctly. And also, this was a big problem with the Superman Returns movie from a few years back. In this one, they didn't try to recapture the Christopher Reeves feel. That was one of the biggest problems I had with the Brandon Routh Superman Returns, was that they were trying to essentially make a sequel to the Christopher Reeve Superman movies of the 70s and 80s. And they tried to get Brandon Routh to play to being Christopher Reeve's version of Superman. And that was one of the big things that fell apart about that movie. This one, they didn't try to do that. They were making their own Superman movie here in Man of Steel. They weren't trying to play into past versions. Zack Snyder had his own vision of Superman, and he made his own vision of Superman, and I think that worked out really well. And also, I'm glad that this movie had a more Zack Snyder feel. If you're a fan of Zack Snyder's work, Sucker Punch, the 300 movie about the 300 Spartans, then he's got a very distinct visual style, and this movie sort of had that sort of Zack Snyder feel, and I'm glad that it did. I was worried, and I had commented a few weeks back that I was afraid that there was going to be too much Christopher Nolan feel to this movie, since he was a writer and executive producer on this, and his sort of Batman, dark, gritty film noir style I didn't think would play into a Superman movie. But I saw a lot more Zack Snyder in the way this film was shot and the effects and everything than I did Christopher Nolan. So I'm glad that Snyder kept his vision and his sensibilities prominent in the way this movie went down. Also, I'm really glad this movie had an actual body count. Generally, when it comes to Superman movies, nobody ever dies. A lot of stuff gets broken, a lot of smashing goes on, but everybody survives. And it's always been something at the forefront of my mind that's like, how can you have this level of just wholesale destruction going on, and everybody just steps out of the rubble? No, we're okay. Hey, just call a rescue team or something. We'll be fine here until they get here. No, but this one, you don't see a ton of people dying, but you see like people running away from a wave of destruction, and it overtakes them, and you just have to assume that they died. You can't have the level of destruction that was wrought on Metropolis in this movie and not have just thousands of people having died in the attack. So we finally get a Superman movie with a ton of destruction and an actual body count. So that's great. I'm glad they stuck to a more realistic portrayal of the kind of destruction that would happen. And another great thing in this movie, it had actual Superman fighting with Zod and all of his Krypton cronies who came with him. There actually was Superman fighting other superpowered beings. Something that didn't happen in the last movie, The Superman Returns. And even a lot of the Christopher Reeve movies, you know, there was Superman 2 where he fought Zod and Zod's couple of Krypton cronies that he brought with him. But mostly it's just been Superman, you know, if like a building's collapsing, he'll hold it up. Or if somebody's falling from a high place, he'll fly up and catch him. Or if a train is barreling towards a gap in the track, he'll jump in front of it and he'll push it to a stop. It's really just Superman doing feats of strength in most cases. This one, actual fighting, actual foes that can challenge him blow for blow, and he's fighting him back. I really enjoyed that. That was awesome to finally see done with the kind of technology and special effects that we have nowadays. It was one thing way back in the original Christopher Reeve movies back in the early 80s when they really couldn't do a whole lot without it looking like cheesy green screen effects because that's all they had the technology for. Now we can do virtually anything we want in movies, and then with Superman Returns a few years ago, the most he did was lift a big kryptonite island out of the water, and he never actually fought anyone. So I was glad to see the fighting in this one. And one more note on another positive thing. I just got to say this. 2 words, and that should be enough. If you've seen it, you'll understand what I mean. Stabler rules. Okay, so those were the positives. Those are the things I really liked about the movie. But I said it wasn't a perfect movie, and it wasn't quite a perfect movie, but it was really, really good. But I did have a couple of negative things to say about it. Not many, just a couple here. One thing that I did notice was General Zod. I was worried right from the beginning that they were redoing General Zod because in the original Christopher Reeve movies, Superman 2 with General Zod as the bad guy was easily the best. And Terrence Stamp as General Zod was picture-perfect, awesome villain. This time around, they're redoing General Zod, and they had Michael Shannon playing him. He did a respectable job. I didn't necessarily have a huge problem with his Zod, but I really did prefer the way Terrence Stamp portrayed the character. In this one, Michael Shannon portrayed General Zod as a patriot, as a guy who really wanted to serve Krypton and the Kryptonian civilization down to his last breath. He had a kind of twisted way of going about it, but that's all he was about. He was just an uber patriot. Versus the Terrence Stamp General Zod was a megalomaniac. He was an egotistical D-bag who just wanted to rule over everything because he was that egotistical. He thought he deserved to be the ruler of the entire Krypton civilization. And maybe that's, some might say, a more one-dimensional type of character, just to have him be evil for the sake of evil and megalomaniac, just for the sake of being a megalomaniac. But I really enjoyed his take on the character. I really enjoyed that crazy, egotistical kind of character a little bit more so than I did the Michael Shannon Super Patriot version. Because they almost made General Zod slightly sympathetic in this one. It's like, yeah, he's still a nut. Yeah, he's still over-the-top crazy in his way of serving the Kryptonian civilization, but you could almost feel a little bit sorry for him, especially when he realizes that all of Krypton's destroyed and it has no hope anymore of ever coming back. So I preferred the megalomaniac version that was Terrence Stamp's Zod. And one other thing I want to say that I had a little bit of a problem with, they need to stop killing Jonathan Kent. In the comics, it's gone both ways. There's been retcons to the Superman storyline where his dad, Jonathan Kent, dies early on in his life, but then there's also been entire runs where, you know, he's been Superman for years and both of his parents are still alive back in Smallville. And I prefer the versions where Jonathan Kent is still alive. That's the version that I grew up with. That's the version that I always read, and that was the way it was in the cartoons and in some of the TV shows. I was always familiar with a Jonathan Kent outliving his son, where Superman died, you know, in the fight against Doomsday before his dad ever died. And it just feels to me like when they kill off Jonathan Kent early on in Superman's life, they're just trying to steal Spider-Man's thunder. You know, that's what Spider-Man's motivation was. His Uncle Ben died because he didn't use his powers to stop it from happening, and that guilt causes him to be the moral character he always is throughout everything else that he does in his life. When they do that with Superman by having his dad die the way he did in this movie, because Superman didn't stop it from happening, it really just feels like they're stealing from Marvel and stealing from Spider-Man specifically. So I prefer the versions where Jonathan Kent survives later into his life and always is sort of there as a living embodiment of Superman's morality. He's always there to give Clark advice and tell him the right path to take. So I would have preferred it if his dad had lived in this movie. But those are the only two things that I really have to say negative about the movie. The General Zod thing and the Jonathan Kent thing. Other than that, everything about this movie was great. Loved it. I'll probably see it again. Definitely going to get it when it comes out on Blu-ray. So I would probably give it on a 4-star scale. I'd probably give this one about a 3.5 stars. It's not quite perfect. I reserve 4 stars for something that is absolutely perfect, but this was a 3.5 stars, maybe a 3 3/4 stars. This was a really great movie. If you haven't seen it, and you've just heard all the spoilers I gave, I highly recommend you going to see it. If you've already seen it, go see it again. So that's my review of Man of Steel, but then I also wanted to take this episode to talk about a few of the other Superman media, TV shows, and cartoons and whatnot that have come out over the last couple of decades. I already talked about Superman Returns a little bit, and I talked about how it was lame that they tried to recapture the Christopher Reeve stuff, and how he never actually really fought anybody in that movie. So I'm going to skip right past that and go to another Superman version that I was very underwhelmed with. And that was the show Smallville. Now, I watched the entire first season of Smallville, and I enjoyed it pretty well. It was a bit too Dawson's Creek, a bit too teen dramedy for me, but it was okay. I stopped watching it at the second season, because that's when stuff just started to really go off the rails, and they started to really screw with the Superman mythos. I really don't like it when a movie or TV show based on a comic goes completely off the rails from the comic. So when we're talking about stuff like what General Zod took over Lex Luthor and possessed him for a while, and Superman was meeting all of the members of the Justice League before he was ever even Superman. This is before he moved to Metropolis and started working for the Daily Planet and everything, and he's meeting literally every member of the Justice League. He met Flash and Aquaman and Cyborg, and the one person I kind of wanted him to meet, he never did, unless it happened in later episodes when I wasn't watching. He never met Batman. I was like, why doesn't Bruce Wayne ever come to Smallville or Metropolis or something, and they meet, just in passing even? But I never saw that happen. I never watched these episodes, but I saw that he was fighting Deathstroke at times. He was fighting Doomsday. He fought virtually every Superman villain before he ever became Superman. And he never put on the suit. He never learned how to fly. It was a take on Superman that really seemed to throw the original comics on the ground and take a steaming dump on them. So I really didn't care for that at all. Something I really did like, though, another thing that's been Superman media over the years, are the DC animated movies that have been coming out over the last 5 or 6 years or so. Those have been, for the most part, really good takes on Superman. I've really enjoyed them. Except for one. There was one Superman animated movie that I really didn't like, and it was All-Star Superman. Some of the characters in that I'd never seen before. I didn't know who some of them were. And he was way overpowered. This was the version of Superman who would, like, juggle planets with one hand tied behind his back. It was a little over the top for me. But all the other DC animated movies with Superman, Doomsday, Batman, Superman, Public Enemies, Apocalypse, Superman vs. the Elite, all of them. Loved them all. Own them all. I do have one thing to say about the DC animated movies from kind of a negative standpoint, though. And that is, they need to branch out beyond just Batman and Superman. If you keep up with the Batman, Superman, or with the DC animated movies that come out every 6 months or so, they just go back and forth. They do a Superman, then they do a Batman. Then they do a Superman, then they do a Batman. Then they do a Justice League, just to mix things up, that has Superman and Batman in it. Then it's Superman, Batman, Superman, Batman, maybe a Green Lantern one, Superman, Batman, Superman, Batman. There are so many great DC characters. This is one of the things that ticks me off about DC. They don't branch out and do enough with their other properties. You know, how about a Dr. Fate animated movie? How about a Spectre animated movie? I know they had the animated short with Spectre, and they had one with Green Arrow, and they had one with Jonah Hex. As far as I'm concerned, those are worth their entire own feature-length movie. Don't just give them a 5-minute short. Give them their entire animated movie to themselves. They had a Wonder Woman one, which was pretty good. But how about an Aquaman one? They could do an entire animated movie all about Aquaman with none of the other superheroes in it, about him fighting for control of Atlantis. That'd be cool as far as I'm concerned. But, so they've been really good Superman animated movies. They just need to take a break from them and focus on some of the other DC properties a little bit. And then another great thing that has been another Superman media has been the Justice League animated series and Superman the animated series from the late 90s and early 2000s. Both of those series were great. Absolutely top-notch. There's not a negative thing I can possibly think of to say about either the Superman animated series or the Justice League. Because finally, we get to start seeing all of the extended Superman villains. I mean, Metallo had a big presence there. Parasite, Darkseid, Doomsday, Livewire. They started coming up with their own characters that hadn't really been in the comics before. Livewire was one of those. I mean, we even got to start seeing some of the lame Superman villains, like Toyman, you know? So we were starting to really showcase all of the Superman characters at last, which was something we never saw in any of the other TV shows. Like Lois and Clark, they must not have had much of a budget because they never really had too many Superman villains in that. Every episode was kind of just him figuring out a way to foil a bank robbery without them managing to kill any hostages before he could stop them. It was all just kind of run-of-the-mill crime that he was always trying to stop. And I was always wanting to see more of the more intense Superman villains. And those two animated series, Superman and Justice League, we finally got to see him in all his Superman glory, fighting all the big-time Superman villains. So then we come to the progenitors of Superman and other media, the Christopher Reeve movies of the late 70s and early 80s. Obviously, the first two were great, with Superman 2 and the General Zod storyline being the best of that series, as far as I'm concerned. And then 3 and 4 were god-awful. 3 was the one with Richard Pryor and the supercomputer that managed to fight off Superman for a while. I don't know how that happened, considering the fact that today's iPhones have far more processing power than that supercomputer ever did. And if you throw your iPhone at Superman, do you think it's going to stand a chance against him? No. So 3 was terrible, and then 4, a lot of people hate 4 with a passion. I don't think it's a very good movie, obviously, but it wasn't near as bad as 3. Nuclear Man at least gave Superman a comparably powered character to fight against. Even if he was a kind of lame character, it at least allowed for some superhuman back and forth fighting. But still, it was bad as well. I mean, John Cryer as a weird hipster valley guy was terrible. But 1 and 2 were clearly great, and, obviously we would not have the comic book movies that we have today if not for Superman 1 with Christopher Reeve way back in the late 70s starting the whole ball rolling. It really made comic books a viable source for movies. And from that we got the Batman movies, and from that we got the cartoons and the TV shows, and everything that we have now today can all be traced back to that original movie. So, love it, glad it was created. So that's my little Superman retrospective, my brief synopsis reviews of the various Superman medias, and my detailed review on the Man of Steel. So, this is my homage episode to Kal-El, Clark Kent, the Man of Steel, the man known as Superman. Again, if you haven't seen the film Man of Steel, go out, check it out. If you already have, go see it again, because it's worth a second viewing, definitely. So that'll do it for this episode, and I'll see you guys next time around on Random Fandom.